Welcome back to Texas County. We're starting today on some back roads kind of south of Guymon and looking for some, interesting places and learning about some more history of Texas County. We are kind of going to be in the middle part of the county today, and there are going to be maybe a couple of towns, definitely some more cemeteries than in part one. Part one, we found a couple of cemeteries. I think we'll find a couple of legit cemeteries today, but also kind of continue to learn about, history of this area. We're also going to finish the day up in Guymon, which is by far the largest city in the county with like 11,000 people, over half the population. So, yeah, we're going to have a little adventure and see what we can find. Well, I said we'd find some cemeteries, and this one looks a lot like the ones we found in our first part. So the Frisco Cemetery, overgrown and not very many headstones visible. But yeah, it is beautiful out here. It is, just kind of wide open. Right here is where we would explore Goodwell, Oklahoma, but I've done a video about that recently, a Small Town USA video about Goodwell. So if you want to learn more about Goodwell and kind of go in the same route that I'm going, this would be a time to stop and watch that video if you haven't. So we'll get through Goodwell and start heading a little bit north, exploring more of the middle of Texas County. So on my map it said Hovey or Hovey right around here, and I followed it all the way as far as I could, and I guess maybe Hovey is some sort of a energy company or business, I don't know. Definitely don't see any signs of any old town or school or anything like that. If you remember in part one of Texas County that I did last time, there were a couple of railroad towns that started in the 30s and ended in the 70s when basically the railroad tracks were pulled up and abandoned. It was like Ava and then Muncie, and then as you follow along you'll get here as you keep going east. And so Hough was started in 1928. Kind of railroad was getting ready to be built through here. And same thing in the 1970s, that track was abandoned. I'm guessing that Hovey or Hovey, where we were last time, probably did have some sort of a railroad stop originally, but maybe that's why it's named that, even though there's nothing there, and maybe it's moved on to being something else now. But here in Hough, there are a few things. There is a community here, and there's a road that kind of goes around the community. There's a church, there's maybe an older building that could have been a town hall of some sort. I don't know. It looks like a house now. But yeah, mostly what you drive in is you're going to see these giant, you know, elevators here. And so definitely stands out. And but I'd say there's maybe a dozen or 20 people living in Hough and still hanging in there. We're continuing to follow that railroad line, and we've come to Strait, Oklahoma. And they have a few more things here than some of the other places. There's actually a school, and I believe it's still open. Obviously, it's the weekend here, and I looked up, and there's like 30 or 40 kids that go here. It's, I think, pre-K through 6. As you drive up, there's a large business. I don't know exactly what that is. There's a sign over here that talks about a pipeline. So maybe there's some sort of energy business over here. And but I don't know much about the history of Strait, about how big it was. It feels like there was more here. There are a few kind of older, look like houses, just older, probably empty buildings. But there's only, in terms of people living here, I only saw a couple houses that maybe people live here. But there's a school, so somewhat maybe centrally located for the remote parts of Texas County, for some of the families to have somewhere to go to school. Let's take a short break from looking for ghost towns and road stops and grain elevators and cemeteries and tell a good old-fashioned no man's land massacre story. Right here, this is Wild Horse Lake, and right here was where the Meadow Massacre happened. And this was part of the Stevens County War in Kansas, and obviously we're not far from Kansas. And right here is where that massacre occurred. Stevens County, Kansas, located just to the north of Texas County, was choosing between Hugoton and Woodsdale to become the county seat. In July 1888, the Marshal of Hugoton and a group of men planned an outing to no man's land. The Marshal of Woodsdale learned of the outing and gathered men to confront the group. Not finding them, they camped for the night on a hay meadow here at Wild Horse Lake. Meanwhile, the town of Hugoton had organized a group of supporters with the intention of rescuing them. They located the Woodsdale camp at the hay meadow, surrounded the party, killing 4 members and injuring a 5th. The Hugoton group, believing they had killed all of the Woodsdale group, returned, saying they had killed everyone in a shootout. However, the surviving member and a group of haymakers who witnessed the event stated the Woodsdale party had been captured, disarmed, and then executed. The state militia was called out and the Hugoton men arrested, but it was soon determined that no court had jurisdiction in no man's land. Eventually, the case was tried before the U.S. District Court in Paris, Texas. 7 men were convicted of murder and sentenced to death. However, on appeal to the Supreme Court, they held that the Paris court had no jurisdiction and no sentence was ever carried out. another ghost town slash railroad stop, Mauser. And this one though has some really cool old buildings. They're showing their age, which is always what we like. And there's both sides of the road. There's some buildings, and then some really, cool buildings. I looked it up. This is actually on the National Register of Historic Places. So yeah, this is same story as the other places, with the railroad coming through in the 30s, ending in the 70s. One interesting thing is a lot of these towns didn't have post offices. I'm thinking maybe because they came along a little later. They didn't come along in like the 1890s or early 1900s. They were a little later, so maybe at that point the roads were a little better and they were able to consolidate the post offices. But yeah, this is some pretty cool stuff to see here. As we're coming from that way from the north, we can see over there, there's Mauser, where the last railroad stop we were talking about. And right here is supposed to be Midway. On my map it says Midway right here. And there's just a farm down there. There's a sign. It says Mauser Lease. But right in line here, you can see way down there, there's another elevator. Now the next town along this line is Hooker. We're not actually going to go to Hooker today, but we're gonna go there in the next video. But I guess we'll go see what that is down there. So way off in the distance, that's Mauser. It's like 5 or 6 miles away, which would make sense because that's about how far away the railroad stops would be back in the day. And now I'm here, and I have no idea what that's called. There's a sign right there, but it's on somebody's property, so I don't want to just walk over there. Maybe somebody can tell me, was this a railroad stop? Was there any kind of a community here? I don't know. It's possible that was Midway. Sometimes maps are wrong. I've definitely found that, go to a dot on the map, especially something like this that you're just not really sure about, and it to be incorrect by a mile or two. Because Midway was kind of close to Mauser. It would seem like that'd be too close for the railroads to be. They were only 3 miles apart. This seemed like a normal, distance. So, I don't know. I know there's some really smart railroad people that watch this channel, and I'm sure they will figure it out and put it in the comments. We're getting close to the end of our day, and now we are in Optima, Oklahoma, and unusual, cool name, and a little bit of an unusual history too. So it was started in the 1880s, and kind of a cattle ranching area. Obviously, it's kind of what it is out here. And they named it Optima because that was Latin for best possible result. And so that's a great way to get your town name. And they started a town, or started, a community. It wasn't incorporated yet. And then in 1901, the railroad was built through here. Different railroad than we've been following today. That was built in 1930. That was east and west. This one was kind of northeast to southwest, and still there today. So 1901, when they built the railroad, they moved the town kind of over to where the railroad was, and started, have a nice little town. 200-300 people in the early 1900s. Then it officially incorporated, and the population was only about 100. I think some of the the early jobs maybe started going away, and but still was a town. Has survived through the Depression, and in the Dust Bowl, obviously. In this area was a tough deal, but around that time they discovered there was some archaeological research done here, and they discovered that people had lived here back at least 600 or more years ago. So there were some finds of things like that, and so that was pretty cool that they were able to find that here, basically in Optima. And the town kind of remained small until 2000. If you look at the census, the population started to increase, and now it's over 300. And you know, 200-300 people in that range for the last 30 years. So there's more jobs. Maybe people are kind of commuting from here over to Guymon, and because Guymon is just down the road a few miles, so probably less expensive to live here. And there's just, you know, more jobs than there used to be, probably. There is a school here, and a couple of official buildings, like, you know, there's a small little town hall, you know, and it feels like, yeah, this was a smaller town, but there's a lot of houses, a lot of, you know, kind of mobile homes and pretty inexpensive houses, a few nice houses, but you can see maybe how that population is growing. The town isn't quite, you know, doesn't have the old buildings like some of the other towns. Usually it's the opposite. The towns used to have 300 people, now they got 100, and this is the opposite. So it's kind of an unusual way the town seems to be growing. But they do have a nice playground. These towns here today, these schools, I got to give it up to them. They all have death go rounds. So if you watch the outtakes, there'll be some good death go rounds in the outtakes. We've come to our last stop of the day in Guymon, and Guymon is the county seat of Texas County. It's the largest city in the entire Panhandle. In fact, with 12,000 people, it's almost twice as much as both of the other two counties combined. And so there's a lot of stuff you could, you know, see and do here. I struggle with towns this size to show, as, you know, all the stuff that's here, because it would be too much for the kind of video that I'm making. So I'll take a little, you know, little drive down the main street and show you a couple things, and then talk about a little bit about the history of Guymon. Originally, Guymon was named Sanford when it was created along the railroad around 1901. That's when it was incorporated. The post office named it Sanford, but then they changed it about a month later to Guymon to avoid confusion with a town in Texas. This was 6 years before Oklahoma became a state. And then in 1907, when Oklahoma did become a state, they named this town the county seat of Texas County, and had a population around 1,000 people, and started growing. And then the Depression and the Dust Bowl hurt, you know, significantly, but there was a gas field discovered nearby, and so by 1940 jobs had come back, and the population continued to grow, and has continued to grow all the way in every census for the most part until now, with a population of 12,965. Definitely by far the largest town in the Oklahoma Panhandle. Thanks for watching this part 2 of Texas County. Hopefully you'll come back next time for our conclusion, part 3, through Texas County, Oklahoma. Hey, you made it all the way to the end of the video. And now that you're here, let me tell you a little bit more about all the other things going on this channel. If you want to become a member, you can become a member on either Patreon or YouTube memberships. There's 3 different levels, and as you are on a different level, there's more and more things, behind the scenes videos, different things that you're going to be able to gain access to. Make sure you check out my website, travelwithawiseguy.com. There's a whole bunch of new stuff on there. There's a merchandise link with some new cool merchandise. There's a newsletter that you can sign up for. About every 3 weeks I send out a new newsletter that's free. I have Google Maps, which has documented every place that I've made a video about, and you can click on there and you can go to the map and you can find the videos that I made, and it's all in one very convenient place. There's lots and lots of other stuff on there, so make sure to check out the website and explore all around what I've got going on. But once again, thank you so much for watching this video, and now on to the real reason that you're at the end of this video, the outtakes. Man, I could smash you with that windshield wiper right now. Hope you're enjoying your ride, buddy. These guys are having a heck of a ride over there. One guy's chilling on the windshield wiper, the other guy, I don't know what he's doing. Oh my, look at this one. Straight Oklahoma. This is definitely a unique design. Could be a 10 out of 10 if it spins well. The wind is almost blowing it already. Let's see. Oh yeah, that is without a doubt a 10 out of 10. If I was ranking my all-time top 10 death go-arounds, it would definitely be in the top 10, high in the running for the number one. Man, that looks like it would probably be hot a day like today. Oh yeah, that's scorching hot. Okay, let's see how it spins. Really good. Well, if you could survive being scalded by sitting down on it, you would have a good time because it spins like a top. All right, I'm gonna give that one an 8.5. Could have been a 9 or 9.5 if the wouldn't burn my hand when I put it on there. Still spinning.